1 year ago, I started the Parawareness YouTube channel with the purpose of acknowledging and researching the similarities between paranormal experiences. When we look at historical experiences of people seeing ghosts, hearing voices, alien contact, demonic attacks, astral projection, spiritual awakening, and many more unexplained happenings, we see a connection. Fast forward to the last 20 years and throw in technology, and it becomes an undeniable pattern approaching epidemic status. Now, these might not all be the same thing, but they are similar enough to apply the scientific method and study them. We see this examination and comparison happening all over the internet. We see it on channels like Jesse Michaels, Area 52, Third Eye Drops, and Through a Glass Darkly. We see this examination through organizations like the Monroe Institute, the John E. Mack Institute, or the Institute of Noetic Sciences, plus many more. I'm happy to say that our channel is about to reach 1,000 subscribers in just 1 year. And I want to thank each of you for supporting both our effort to reveal the truth and provide a space of community that wasn't present 10 years ago when this first started happening for me. Since our Discord server is growing so quickly, we asked 2 members to take on the role of moderators. The following is a conversation with our first moderators, Brittany and Jordan. What you'll see is 4 normal Americans going through paranormal and painful experiences, but doing our best to overcome.
It initially started out as external sounds, not internal voices. It would pretend to be chainsaws, my neighbors.
I thought it was my landlord's daughter messing with me, like setting up microphones in my little studio apartment I had in the basement. So much so that I confronted her. I was like, why would you do something like that? This poor girl, she was like, what are you talking about? Like I scared her.
I thought my upstairs neighbors had a microwave gun pointed at the floor. So I was literally being burned. I had like large patches of skin that were just like bright red. I was getting like zaps. And the voices at the time, they had me convinced that it was my upstairs neighbors. But I came across the targeted individual community and then their concept of directed energy weapons, and off we go. I would hear footsteps, and then they would follow me around the house, and everywhere I went, I heard the footsteps follow me around the house. Then I'd feel this heat on the top of my head, just like barbecuing the top of my skull. And my hair would start like breaking.
I had just laid down in bed. My body went into a state of vibration, and something grabbed my ankles and went yoink and pulled my astral body out of my body, drugged me through my living room, and I was hanging upside down in my kitchen. And it's holding me like this.
So if this is some sort of a higher being or our higher self or whatever, but if it's something that does know that we truly want this to be different, then it's enforcing it on us without our ability to understand why. And so therefore it could be the best thing, not just a good thing. It could be the best thing that's ever happened to us, that this horrible situation was forced on us, right?
The person has to come out of the victim mindset, and they have to stop blaming. First, drawing them out of that into a more clear area where they can then look back at the entire pattern of things from a different perspective, where they're no longer the victim and they're no longer wanting compensation and playing the perpetrator game, and seeing the growth pattern within themselves, and then seeing that manifest within their reality and in their psyche.
Every experiencer has to overcome ontological shock, and we have to do it while the world says we're crazy. At Parawareness, we explore life through the paranormal lens, emphasizing psychology and spirituality over technology. This is Parawareness.
I was hoping to get some of Brittany's story, only because...
Yeah, I wanted to hear too.
Yeah, I was really hoping to get some of your testimony, like just when it started, how it started. Like, do you think that there was anything that had initiated it? Was anything? I'm going to throw a lot of questions at you at one time here, but just, almost like if you're at an AA meeting, what happened, what it was like, and what it's like now, sort of thing. If you could just kind of bring us up to speed, just so people within the community, or you as a moderator, can get to know you as a person and relate to your background. That would be awesome.
It happened 3.5 years ago, around October. It might have been earlier. However, it initially started out as external sounds, not internal voices. It would pretend to be chainsaws, my neighbors. It would act extremely weird. But I was going through a breakup at the time, so I was drinking a lot. And then it only started to talk to me directly after I got sober and I told myself I'm not going to drink anymore. And that's when the voices started, and it pushed with the narrative that it was pretending to be my next door neighbor. But here's the thing. My next door neighbor is black. And it was pretending to be white. So I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. So I actually told that to Peter a few months ago in his VC, and he said that the phenomenon probably did that on purpose. I don't quite understand it. So I thought that I was just going through a mild psychosis because I was drinking for a long time that week. So I'm telling my friend, I'm like, I hear music in the wind. What's going on with my brain? What's going on with my head? So I thought that I had schizophrenia. I'm like, I'm in my 30s. Isn't that not when schizophrenia sets on? So I was just so confused. And I had no idea what I was dealing with for the first 3 years. I didn't know how to find other people who were experiencing this. Then somehow I was just chatting with AI and it told me to go onto Reddit. And that's how I found this community, which I'm very grateful for.
Okay, now the voice that was pretending to be your neighbor, do you still hear that same voice?
No.
Because if you had it in your head, I wonder if it's my black neighbor. You may have heard a black sounding voice. You see what I'm saying? So it's almost like whatever our assumption is, because of course, if you're hearing stuff in your apartment or in your house, wherever you're at, your immediate first thought is it's probably my neighbor. And then that's, it's almost like whatever, and that's what it's going to play off of until that's proven wrong. And then whatever your next expectation is or your next assumption, it'll play off of that. But the chainsaw thing, you're one of the only other people that I know of that has also gotten chainsaws. And I started hearing chainsaws like 10 years ago. That was like one of the first things that I broke through with was the sound of a chainsaw. Yeah. And I thought it was my landlord's daughter messing with me, like setting up microphones in my little studio apartment I had in the basement. I thought she was messing with me so much so that I confronted her, and I was like, why would you do something like that? And this, this poor girl, she was like, what are you talking about? Like I scared her. So, but, yeah. So apparently chainsaws are a thing.
I thought my upstairs neighbors had a microwave gun pointed at the floor.
Yeah.
For a while. Because I lost a bunch of hair.
So you lost hair during this time that you thought that people were pointing a microwave gun at you? Yeah,
I think I sent Kevin like actual pictures of the burns that I was receiving. So I was literally being burned. I had like large patches of skin like that were just like bright red, and then they'd start like peeling like a burn would, I was getting like zaps, things like that. And my hair used to be really long, so I'd wear it up, and it just started like breaking, like shooting off the sides of my head to where I looked like a plucked chicken. And and the voices at the time, they kept on they had me convinced that it was my upstairs neighbors. And I'm like, how is this possible? And I can't remember exactly my train of thought at the time, but I came across the targeted individual community and then their concept of directed energy weapons, and off we go. I'm like, this is it. These motherfuckers got energy weapons, and they're right above me because that's the only way that they could be accomplishing this. Because they would tell me, I would hear footsteps, right? And then they would follow me around the house, and everywhere I went, I heard the footsteps follow me around the house. And then I'd sit down And then I'd feel this heat on the top of my head, just like barbecuing the top of my skull. And my hair would start like breaking off, like falling out. And I'd pull out like large chunks of hair.
I went through the same exact thing. And the most horrible moment that I had with that was in a hotel room at a casino in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And I was in my hotel room, and Jordan, the same exact thing. It didn't matter if I went into the bathroom or if I was in the living room. I could hear the footsteps above me, clump, 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 clump. And they were hitting me with this like bump, 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 bump. And I could feel it. It was pulsing, making my heart pound. And the voices kept telling me, Johnny's going to shoot you. That was like a name that they used to use, was Johnny. But it didn't matter what room I went into. And then I thought they were blasting me through the wall with it. So I got so pissed off. Yeah, I got so pissed off. I walked out of the room. My girlfriend's screaming, "Where the F are you going?" Because she sees I'm losing my mind. And I said, I'm not putting up with this. So I go up to the room directly above us and I start pounding on the door, and nobody answered. And I come back downstairs, and Rebecca's walking around looking all over the place for me. She's got it in her head that I'm like, having sexual relations with somebody else because they were messing with her too. So there was like this whole dual plot going on between us, right? Where they were setting me up against her and her up against me. And then we're getting bombarded with this, whatever it was. But, do you ever have the thought that we either, that was occurring on a different dimension, or that we at some point shifted timelines? I have that thought, quite a bit.
Yeah, I feel like the way that I was living my life and the trajectory that I was on, I most definitely shifted timelines. But I feel like it's not like shifting timelines isn't what people think. Like, you're not placed into an alternate reality. Your awareness is just expanded to where it offers you different choices. Like, these actions lead to different places. The drugs that I was taking and like the toxic behaviors that I was displaying led to more drug addiction. And that was this negative timeline that I may have ended up on. But when the phenomenon entered, although it was scary, it prompted me to really clean my act up. And, although terrified at the time, like, I started obeying the law, I stopped doing drugs. I started taking care of my body. I started really working on educating myself about like energy and like how to work with it within my body, how to clean out my system. Right. And then this led to higher cognitive abilities, which led to more awareness, which allowed more positive decision making to be made. Like those realities opening up as soon as I was able to match the frequency of them, which I couldn't before because it just wasn't on my radar. And in that way, I shifted timelines.
Only because I've been throughout this experience, even though my life after I got sober and started getting on the right track, and then with the community and a job and raising a family and everything, I would still occasionally be brought down into like what Buddhism would call like a bardo state, or like a hell realm, where I'm on some torture chamber, metal slab, being tortured by this little torture man who's got all sorts of contraptions up on the wall that he's using to torture me. It's as if at all times there's another reality going on that I'm in, and there's like sort of a sequential, event going on there that I'm being tortured in, or I'm being verbally abused or physically abused or sexually abused. And that is separate from this reality. But when they want to, they can bring the two together so that I experience on this reality what's happening there. Now, whether that's all happening within my own mind, like in a dream state, like there's a constant dream just going on, and then that intertwines with this one. And then I'm in my awake state, I feel all of that going on, just like how you feel stuff in a dream state, like the two kind of come together. But then I've also been shown realities where I didn't get it together, and Rebecca and I are still fighting, and now we have a child that's screaming in the background, you know? So, which makes me think that, you know, when stuff like that was happening with the directed energy weapons, that I was brought into some other arena. So I don't know what you want to call it, to experience that, and then brought out of it in hopes that I would change, but I kept going back. I often wonder if that energy that we're hit with doesn't sort of tear the veil between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, or the unconscious mind, you know, and sort of release whatever archetypal, theological, ancestral, spillover stuff, or carry on stuff is going on back there. You know, like all the stuff that was just sort of unconsciously driving us to begin with, all of that gets torn open and just sort of spills forward, and it's a confusing nightmare to sort of begin to shuffle through and organize. You know, so Brittany, I've noticed in the past few weeks you've really you've been given some really positive reports about your experience and like everything you've been going through. You want to fill us in with that?
Yes, it has been more positive for me lately. I don't know if anybody else here has experienced this, but instead of just the constant pounding inside my body, it's more of like a gentle hum, and it feels pleasant. So that's one of the more positive things that is new. Have any of you experienced that?
Yeah, I did for a while, and it ended up causing sometimes like it's like when the voices are nice, or when the gentle vibration is nice, you know. And then what that would always do is it would always reel me in, and I would go, oh, okay, this is actually a good spiritual experience, right? And then it would be like Lucy kicking, you know, holding the football for Charlie Brown and pulling it away at the last second every single time. And every single time I would give into it a little bit and go, oh, maybe this is actually a spiritual thing happening that's trying to help me. And then every time I would think for a moment that it was positive or pleasant or whatever, whether it was the voices or the synchronicities or the vibrations, it would turn around and be like, okay, good. You like it? Well, guess what now? You know, got real scary.
I feel like what that teaches is radical unattachment. Like, doesn't matter if it's good, if it's bad, if it feels good, feels bad. If you formulate a preference to the style of interaction, and then it changes, you suffer from your, from your preference, you know,
from your desire. Yeah. From your own desire.
Yeah. No matter what it's doing, if it's doing something I like, I don't like, I remain neutral to it. If it's doing something that I don't like, I'm neutral to it. Doesn't matter if I'm seeing demons or like an angelic being somewhere. I try to just be neutral.
We have to be, because they do it without our permission. So anyone who does something without our permission, it can't be technically considered good. Even if it feels good, it's all a lie. It's all an illusion. It's just that if it doesn't respect your boundaries, it's not good. But it doesn't mean it's bad either.
Right. The only argument for that, of course, to play devil's advocate against that, is that your parent might not respect your boundaries as well. Because, like, you know what I mean? Like, they're going to put parental controls on your internet when you're 12, because there's certain things that they're going to say, no, I'm going to restrict your access to that. And it's for your own good. And so if this is some sort of a higher being or a spiritual, whatever, who knows what it is, but if it's something that actually knows that we want, or ourselves, you know, another version of our higher self or whatever. But if it's something that does know that we truly want this to be different, then it's enforcing it on us without our ability to understand why. And so therefore it could be the best thing Not just a good thing. It could be the best thing that's ever happened to us, that this horrible situation was forced on us, right?
Yeah. For me, it was a very spiritual awakening, but that's not to say that it was a gentle process. It was an assassination of the false self. It was a literal death.
That's a great way to put it. And that's so true. And that's why it hurts people. People get so mad and scared and angry and vengeful, because it is actually killing the old you.
Right. Yeah. And I kind of brought it up in the group the other day, and it's, and for me, in my head, it came down to a very simple equation that gets inverted. Right. So for the most part, we go through life and we measure ourselves in relation to the world. And the equation for that is I am X in relation to Y, whatever that is. I am this in relation to that. I am male in relation to female. I am white in relation to black. I am tall in relation to short. This is just, and we do this constantly. I am good in relation to bad. I am, we just do this constantly. And this thing comes along and it takes a hold of that equation. And now your attention gets, directed inward towards it. And it plays the same exact game. It plays the I am X in relation to Y being a variable of your assumption towards it. You see what I'm saying? So now, instead of measuring yourself to your outside world, you're trying to figure out what measure what this thing is in relation to what you could, everything that you've come to know so far about the world, whether it's
human morality,
whatever it is, is it my neighbors? Is it the police? Is it all the things that exist within our environment? You're going to use that to try and measure it, and then the whole time you're doing that, you're sort of self-correcting, right? Because it's treating you like so you're like, all right, it's the police in relation to whatever crime I did. And then you're like, I got to fix that shit. It's my parents in relation to, the way that I treated them or mistreated them. I got to fix that. And you just sort of keep going up and up on the ladder. But eventually, in the end, you just come to find that the only thing that ever really existed was a very persistent insinuation. And that's it. It's just, and you're right. I think one of the best stories that I heard, and this was years ago, and this is what helped me really, attain a neutral position. There's a story out of, I think it's, some Air Force base. Holloman. Is that an Air Force base? Holloman Air Force Base. Does that sound familiar? Might have to look that up. But anyway, there's a story out of there where, a lieutenant or a general came across an alien, an extraterrestrial, in a UFO. And the general's first response to the alien after he pulled his gun out was friend or foe. And the alien said neither, right? Because that's how we think all the time. Friend or foe, good or bad, this or that. That's just, we think very binary. We have, as humans, we have very binary thinking, 0 or 1, this or that. Good or bad, get that away from me. I want more of that. It's just this constant clinging and aversion state. But with the alien, when he said that to him, he said friend or foe, because he needs to know who he is in relation to the alien. I am X in relation to Y. It's that same equation. And the alien said neither, right? The alien didn't have a preference. He didn't have an agenda, an ulterior motive or anything like that. Now, whether the story's true or not, I don't know. But, this was I remember seeing it on it was either a YouTube video or a podcast. But I remember seeing that and adopting that perspective towards it in the very beginning, to not have neither friend nor foe. And that, that has really served me well throughout this entire experience.
When you ask the alien friend or foe and the alien says neither, the alien, maybe existing on a higher plane of existence closer to the one point of creation, would probably know that it is not separate from the human.
Right. Yeah, that's a cool way of looking at it.
Could it have also answered truthfully with the word both?
And this kind of comes back to, I remember you and I were discussing this on previous podcasts, the tetralemma, if you remember what that is. So the tetralemma is it's an old Indian, philosophical train of thought to help people break from duality into non-duality. And there's 4 parts to the tetralemma. And it says A is true, A is false, A is both true and false, or A is neither true nor false. Or it could also be related as, it is this, it is that, it is this and that, it is neither this nor that. So, and if you start utilizing that with everything in your environment, like this is true, this is false, this is true and false, this is neither true nor false. That sort of is supposed to be able to break the mind free from dualistic thinking. And if you look at quantum computers now that they're coming out with, right, they operate on the same exact platform, right, where you have ones, zeros, or they're in a superposition of 1 and 0. Yeah, and then you have the 4th position where it's neither 1 nor 0. And that's when it actually takes a measurement and makes the most direct probable measurement. So it's interesting to see that I think it's like 2,000 years old, or maybe even older than that 2,000-year-old tetralemma now being used in quantum computers to figure out, crazy mathematical calculations.
I think that for human beings right now, what we're being taught, I think, and I think that everyone needs to be able to embrace this better, though we would all be healthier if we could embrace it more, is the cognitive dissonance, right? The inability to hold 2 conflicting thoughts in your head at the same time and allow them both to be true at the same time. It's almost impossible for the average person to do that, but it's been forced upon us. And now we have to do it. We have to, because when we start to do our research, right, and I'm sure, you've all done this too, but when we start to do our research and start to think, well, what is this thing? Then we have like 10 different templates that we go, okay, it could be that, or that. And then you have to hold all of them as possibility while none of them are the truth. They're all true and none of them are true, right? So exactly what you're talking about, the tetralemma.
Well, that's what one of the voices said to me in the very beginning. He said, what do you want this to be? And I mean, that really took me back, right? Because in my head, I'm like, this could only be one thing, right? But, he said, well, what do you want this to be? Meaning, like, the mind is so expansive. Do you want it to be government surveillance, or do you want it to be, a form or a path of enlightenment? Do you want it to be this, or do you want it to be that? And then, of course, my mind always goes back to, well, who's exacting this upon me? Right. It's like, and it's like, and who, like, and where are you at? That's where my mind will always go. It's like, all right, so you're the one that's enforcing this upon me. And it's like, well, where are you at to be enforcing this upon me? And are you just going along for the ride, or am I catching up to you wherever you are?
Something interesting about the tetralemma and like quantum physics is that everything exists in superposition until it's observed, and then it collapses into reality. I think about how that like relates to the phenomenon and like the power of our belief and our attention. What you pay attention to, you feed. What you believe, you will perceive. So like if you have a dysregulated nervous system and you do not feel safety inside of your body, you are then looking outside of your body for danger, and you will find danger at a grocery store with the old woman pushing a shopping cart. If your body is in that state of fight or flight and you can't regulate the nervous system and create safety inside your body. That's something else I wanted to talk about. Was the nervous system dysregulation that a lot of us start out inside of in the beginning of the phenomenon. Most of us are, we're not in very great like positions in life. We've been through the ringer, and then the phenomenon shows up, and we have all these like afflictions on top of us, addictions, bad health habits, lifestyles that are just not very good for us. And then the phenomenon shows up and it spikes your nervous system. And when you are hit with that much adrenaline, and I thought it was directed energy weapons. I still don't know what it is, but I just call it a nervous system spike now. When you are not able to regulate that fight or flight response within your body, and then you react from say like anger or like frustration or something like that, and you direct it outwardly towards someone or something, I feel like that is worst case scenario. That's where a lot of TIs will, I don't even like calling them TIs, experiencers will run into problems, land themselves in jail or wherever they may end up hurting themselves or someone else. But what I noticed was there was no danger other than the danger I was perceiving. And when I was able to activate my parasympathetic nervous system response and regulate the feeling of not having safety within my body and create safety through the breath, usually doing like I think they call it triangle breathing, in breath of 4, out breath of 4, hold for 4. And I would do that until the feeling dissipated. For me, I feel a significant difference in my stress levels. Box breathing kind of allows me to be more present, aware in the moment. The triangle breathing kind of bypasses that feeling of panic when you don't take another breath immediately. Sometimes the body can panic a little bit. So box breathing is in for 4, out for 4, hold for 4, in for 4, hold for, I can't remember, but there's 4 different breathing cycles. And then the triangle, there's 3 breathing cycles. Also, it is your reality creation machine, right? So the mind is a prediction model on a neutral day, right? But if you have all this trauma inside of your nervous system and like being held in your body, or all these like self-imposed limitations, like you will perceive the future based on your past. And if you are used to failure, you will predict failure in the future. So when you're then able to regulate the nervous system, and I think I don't want to say it's a phenomenon, but for some reason or another, a lot of those energetic imprints, a lot of those like traumas that we experience from our childhoods or that were passed down to us from our parents end up being processed inside of this, like pushed out of our body to where like, well, not pushed out, but they're integrated to where like you don't no longer deal with them anymore. Drug addiction being one, gambling being one, or like problems with money, you name it, they all kind of get worked out. So the mind stops predicting failure or danger or really anything based on the past. And then you're like, when you were no longer predicting based on your past experience, you were then open and available to a new experience. So it's been very helpful for me in that way.
The nervous system regulation, and you always talk about that, and I think it's hugely important. I have so many things to say about it, but I wanted to get Brittany's take too. So Brittany has been experimenting a lot with fasting and changing her diet and her intake. And I'm sure that also ends up having a big effect on our electrical system, right?
Yes, it does. Tomorrow I'm going to start 3 months without meat, where I largely only eat fruits and nuts, just because I want to know how my body responds. But I will also say I've also tried these new supplements where I'm doing a parasite detox, and the phenomenon has been notably different. It's been quieter, and it's never quiet.
What are you taking for the parasite detox? What do you got there? Oh, wormwood, black walnut, and cloves. Yeah.
But I'm also taking it with binders as well. So I take it, then an hour after, I will take binders called zeolite powder, so it can actually not just kill the parasites, that it will absorb all that stuff in my body that are the dead parasites into the binders to expel it out of my body. And I have noticed, I will say it's a very notable difference. It's only been a few days, so I can't say for sure, because the phenomenon does love to try to trick you.
How do you feel as far as like your cognitive in a abilities and like overall awareness on your fast?
I feel cleaner. I feel like it's natural. When I'm in it, it's like that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And it feels good. I feel mentally sharp. I feel strong. I don't have the desire to eat or for food. But I will say that when I used to do fast, probably about 10 years ago, I did a lot of juice fast. That is extremely challenging. I felt physically ill when I did those. But when I do dry fast, I feel clean.
Now, real quick, Brittany, what's the longest fast that you've done recently since you've become started having these experiences? What's the longest fast that you've done?
It's the one that I talked to you about when I took a break. So I did, what was it, 60 hours and then another 60? Otherwise, before it was probably 10 years ago when I did a fast for about 5 days.
I know this is weird to a lot of people, but when you look at that, because I base so much of how I see these things not off of necessarily like spiritual or even historical, but data, And so when I look at the fact that there is that guy named Angus Barbieri, who weighed 400 something pounds, and this was back in the 50s or 60s, I can't remember, but he weighed 400 something pounds. And he goes to the doctor and he says, what should I do? And I've tried dieting and it's not working. I can't exercise because I'm just too big. And the doctor says, we're going to put you on a fast. And so we're going to check you. I want you to come in every day and to the doctor, and we're going to check your levels. We're going to check you out pretty much every day. And we're going to put you on a month-long fast or something like that, or 3 weeks or something like that, something crazy. Well, Angus goes these 3 weeks and goes, I don't need to eat. And all he's having is like, what's it called? Not whey, but, I can't remember, but it was something like hardly anything, no food at all, basically. And he goes for a month, and then he goes for 2 months, and he does not eat any food. He loses 250 pounds or something like that in 1 year, and he does not eat a morsel of food for a year. And he goes on a year-long fast. You can look it up on Wikipedia, Angus Barbieri, and he was a Scottish guy. And so when you think about that, then I almost end up sometimes seeing food as the pharmaceutical industry. I almost end up seeing it as, as medicine, like our thought that we need medicine, and this thought that was pounded into our heads, 3 square a day. You need 3 square a day. Well, then how can we go so long without eating if we need 3 square a day? And I personally, like Jordan brought up, I feel much healthier. I feel sharper. I feel clearer when I don't eat, because think about, as soon as you eat something, what's the best time for a nap? Like right after a good meal, you're like, oh, I'm going to take a nap now. If you sit let's say you're around a bunch of family and no one's eaten yet, and people start to get a little snippy, go have a meal together. As soon as the meal's over, no one's griping anymore. Everyone's in a sedated mode. You know what I mean? And so it really does start to almost seem like something that we might not even need near as much as we think we do.
One of the more fascinating biblical stories is when Jesus sent his disciples out, to start doing like evangelism. And they came back to Jesus and they said, Lord, we were casting out demons in your name. Even all the demons bowed down to your name. He said, except for some demons wouldn't listen, we weren't able to cast them out. And he said, this is very interesting. He said, those demons can only be taken out through prayer and fasting. That's it. So like even, whatever you want to look at a demon as, but whatever there's some sort of ailment or that can only be addressed through prayer and fasting and can't even come out, even Jesus said that he wasn't able to do it. It had to, the only way that it could come out was through prayer and fasting.
I don't want to freak anyone out.
I think that'd be really hard. You know what I mean? Like you got to look at the group that you're talking to, like that would be, you'd probably have to pull your pants down and just start swinging your junk around or something, to freak me out.
It's poison. It's poison, man. So like they got all these chemicals inside of the food that are like the body. It's not biodegradable or bioavailable. So you consume this and it's stored inside of your body. That's where like high cholesterol and clogged arteries and all these things come, into play. And then the pharmaceutical company comes in and they're like, here, take this pill, rather than don't eat the food, change your diet, clean it up. The food is a major issue.
Yeah. There are so many people who really believe in that we have the ability to heal ourselves through a combination of certain practices and intention and breathing and things like that. But I think that I really feel like we're about to see a lot of that come out. There are a lot of people doing actual scientific kind of research using the scientific method to kind of prove, if it's possible. And I imagine if we saw some scientific proof that people could get behind, and there are people who are going to push back on that because there's no money to be had in me being able to heal myself. There's not someone that gets to make money from food and medicine off of that, right?
I mean, we kind of do see scientific proof, even with documentation of the placebo effect. I mean, there's something to that where if a person just believes that what they're taking has the capacity to heal them, they heal themselves with a sugar pill, So, I mean, that alone, just the placebo effect alone shows that we do have the capacity within ourselves, but it's almost like we have to fake ourselves out, or we have to transcend the trickery of it all and just know within ourselves that we have the capacity to do this and rely on that understanding,
Yeah. It's not a knowing that is attained by any like logical standard. It's something that you feel within you, that you have that capacity, and it's not widespread. It's not taught. You hear somebody tell you I can heal my body, and you're like, 6 months ago, I probably wouldn't have believed them until my own energy body started waking up and I started to be able to direct energy with my awareness, with my breath, right? Moving energy from my lower energy quarters into like my higher energy centers, and I feel like a lot of the food that we ingest that is like distributed to America, a lot of the porn addictions, right? It's to drain the energy and then prohibit the flow of it. So if you can keep someone depleted of energy and then you can clog their, I think they call them meridian lines. If you can clog those, the pathways which energy moves throughout the body, then you limit the evolutionary potential of that individual. And that's going on a global scale, but people are starting to wake up to it.
I've also read something recently about less in your food will change the structure of what we were just talking about, which I'm not a huge Bible individual, but I've been doing some research in that area, and it's said that if you bless over your food and you give thanks, your body will be happy and respond to it better. Your body will work more efficiently as you eat, and it will use it and absorb everything properly instead of needing to pair. Like, for example, with the multivitamins, you shouldn't take a multivitamin with iron in it because it blocks the absorption of some of the other things. But if your body's in a right place to actually absorb it, it will absorb it. People don't know who forgot the names, but people did test on themselves, actually. And it was an interesting finding. I'll have to try to find it again.
I feel like the more that we understand, the more that we try to manipulate, and then the more that we try to manipulate, the further we get from what we could actually be naturally, and especially with the pharmaceuticals, like they're like, all right, here, take this medication, but this medication has 10 side effects. So,
yeah,
let's see what side effects you respond to. And then if you have a side effect, we'll give you medication for that side effect. And then that medication has X amount of side effects. And if you have any side effects for that medication, then we'll give you this. So like you wind up in this like causal medicated, thing where you're taking medication just for side effects and then more medication for more side. And then your body's not able to actually regulate and go into a state of homeostasis. I'd say one of the better things that I started taking, and I feel like I plateaued on a little bit and I've laid off of it in the past month, was magnesium. And at first I was taking it before I went to bed, and it was because that's what they recommend. But it was keeping me awake. Like, it wasn't actually having the calming effect. So then I started taking like 3 different types of magnesium during the day, and ashwagandha. And that, if I take that, like when I get home from work around 4:00, that was working out really, really well.
It is my belief that the body knows what to do when you leave it alone. It's the tampering that always got me into trouble. Like, the body can heal cancer, heal broken bones, cuts, scrapes, bruises, brain injuries, pretty much anything that isn't, I don't know what you would call, like some kind of, thing that you were born with. The body's capacity to heal itself is just incredible, and it has what it needs to do that. And I think someone had brought up the concept, I think it was you, Tony, of like breatharianism, the practice of not eating food, which is something that I want to work towards. I want to get off of the, like right now, I've just been trying to eat like a lot of fruit and red meat and get off of the processed foods. Not perfect at it yet, but I'm on my way. And then the next step after that, since I began the practice of working with the energy within my body, and I can literally feel it. It's the craziest thing. Like, I can move energy like from my crown, like all the way through my body and into my arms, and they start, like, the veins start popping out just by thinking about it. So I'd really like to see like what this body is actually capable of.
And when you get into the targeted individual phenomenon or experiencers, I talked to a woman sometime over the summer, I think it was, who was having who knew for a fact she was being attacked by reptilian aliens that were invisible. And she had actual scratches. She sent me pictures of these scratches on her body. And this is a recorded phenomenon that people will, when they feel like they're being attacked by demons or ghosts or whatever, aliens, they'll actually get scratches from invisible things on their body. And when you think about, Jordan, why do you think your hair fell out? Because your body can also, while it can heal itself, it can also hurt and kill itself through our intentions and beliefs, I think, and I think that that's what was happening to you, is that you were telling your system, I am being hurt right now. And it believed it so much. Your body does what you believe, what you tell it, right? And so it believed it so much that it actually made your hair physically fall out. And that's almost proof that we can heal ourselves right there if we can hurt ourselves just with these beliefs. Now, I know it's possible that there was someone using some sort of a ray gun on you, right? It's possible, but that's not what the evidence shows, in my opinion, at all. When you look at the history of the phenomenon and all these things, it really, to me, I just can't get away. And maybe it's because of my history of believing in manifestation and that our thoughts and intentions are powerful. But I can't look at it as anything but that what we believe will happen is way more likely to happen. And the more that we believe it when we are in a hyper-vigilant, energetic, high energy state, the more it's going to happen.
Tony, have you ever had any physical, like observable physical reactions to anything that you've gone through, like visible marks on you or bruises or anything like that?
No, I've never had anything like that, even though, it's been it's been 11 years now that I've been feeling constant physicals, and I've never had any that I could tell any, except the only thing that would even come close is that I realized that after I started losing weight, I realized that I had a hernia that was protruding pretty massively. And I was like, okay, that's a little bit of a problem, but I think I'll be okay. And then one day I got really super angry at the phenomenon. I got so angry and I started yelling and cursing and, and saying, I'm going to defeat you. You can't stop me. I'm invincible. I'm going to win, because that's what I do. I win, and I'm going to show you, right? And this male voice came in, which is almost always female voices for me. This male voice came in and was like, oh yeah, you have crossed a line and you're going to see. And then the very next day, the hernia pain was so bad, and then the protrusions started getting worse and worse by the day. So I ended up having to have hernia surgery. And so that's the only thing that would kind of be close, that the voice was basically like, no, you messed up. You don't get to have that kind of prideful response to us. And so now we're going to hurt you. But that's not the same as having scratch marks on your body. I don't think, because I knew I had a hernia already. Right. So.
Now, Brittany, you've dealt with a lot of
Physical, yes. I have a scar on my leg. I had my ear in, and the phenomenon over time, it always applied pressure on my ear. And I had my earrings in 24/7 and it ripped it out. I've also experienced pressures in my cheek right now. This happened like 2 weeks ago, where I was chewing and it like put part of my cheek in and I bit my mouth open. Sometimes it's not me biting it. It has happened before where from the pressure, blood actually splurts out.
Jeez.
I've had a lot of that where it'll make me bite myself at a key moment. Like, yeah.
I had a very crazy experience in the hospital one time. So I went to the hospital convinced that I was about to have a stroke, because I'd pretty much lost all of my cognitive functions. I couldn't put a coherent sentence together to save my life. Every time I tried to speak, I felt like I was having a heart attack and I was going to pass out. And so I ended up going to the hospital, and I think that I have implants, right? So I don't tell the hospital that. I tell them I think I had a stroke or something like that, right? And so I'm sitting there trying to do all their little stroke tests, and they got these pictures you look at, and they say, what's in the corner? Like, move your hands this way. And like, I couldn't do any of it. Couldn't see what was on the page, couldn't move my hands in the correct order. So they end up doing an MRI, and none of the pictures come out. I'm sitting there laying perfectly still, and the guy's in there telling me, stop moving your head. And the phenomenon at this time is saying something to the effect of, we love riding the roller coaster, because that's what the MRI machine does. It like spins around and So they thought that was pretty funny. So I go back to my room, and they're trying to convince me to open my mouth. They're like, we're taking back our implants. We're sick of this. You went and scrambled our technology with your little MRI machine or something like that. And so they're like, open your mouth. I'm taking back my implant. And I'm like, no, I'm not opening my mouth. And they're sitting there zapping me and poking me and, telling me they're going to do all this, wicked, crazy shit. And I'm sitting there like refusing to comply. And then they knock me out. And I wake up probably, I don't even know, a few hours had passed or something like that. The nurse comes in, wakes me up, and she tells me I'm bleeding. So I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, the side of your face, you have a stream of blood that came down and like dropped on you. So like right where my ear is, I don't know exactly how or what happened, but they had convinced me that they removed an implant from me. and I had this blood dropping down from the side of my face. Prior to that, though, right before the phenomenon showed up, I had a sleepwalking incident. I woke up as I was face planting on the ground inside of my bedroom, woke the whole house up. And the morning when I woke up, I checked my lip and there was a perfectly circular piece of flesh missing out of the soft tissue of my gums right beneath my teeth. And then a portal opens up in my bedroom. So I'm like, yeah, I didn't know what to think. For some reason, I thought the neighbors had teleport technology based on one of the TI echo chambers that I was a member of. I said, has anybody heard about this happening before? And then one of the members like, oh yeah, Project Bluebeam. You never heard of that? And they're like, yeah, so your neighbors must have teleport technology. And I'm like, these
yeah. Damn neighbors with the teleportation technology. All right, so let me ask you something.
If I had a nickel.
Yeah. All right. Like my neighbors are billionaires that can afford a teleportation machine. All right, let me ask you something, Jordan. Looking back now, do you believe that occurred 100% within this reality, or that there was an alternate reality going on where that was probably occurring and overlapped this one? Because that's kind of that's where I'm at with all of this right now, is that there's overlapping realities where they allow, it's almost like a shift of awareness, right? So like right now I'm fully aware of you three. We're having a podcast and a friendly conversation, but I've had times where it will take my awareness and shift it towards something else. And then when it does shift my awareness towards something else, all of a sudden the memories of that reality all come flooding back. Like I'm not confused at all. Like what's going on. I'm like, oh yeah, this is supposed to be happening right now with this over here. But then there's this here. And I think what they do is like they put them together, so, and then sometimes the physical from that will overlap, where you'll experience the implant being taken out of your ear, and I'm saying, this is what I'm saying, is that maybe on some other reality, you have implants in your ear, or at least because if you really think about it, everything that we perceive, everything that we observe, it's all happening up here, all of it. We're all registering everything, like everything that we sense out here. It's all just being registered up here. And I think that there's a lot more going on up there that is equally as real as this, but it's only as real as you are currently aware of it. And when they shift your awareness from reality to reality, and they can actually heterodyne the two and bring them together, you'll start, the physical sensations that you're feeling on that will start appearing here as well. But I'm interested to see what your thoughts are on that.
So one time, well, I guess I have I believe that all potentials exist simultaneously. It's just like our awareness that is collapsing this one experience into what we are currently experiencing based on our awareness, perceiving what is in front of us. But that's not saying that every other possibility isn't existing simultaneously, outside of my awareness. And sometimes they do kind of move between each other. So one time I was on a fast, and I was sitting in treatment, and I was about 36 hours in or some shit like that. And I start vibrating, dude. Like my whole body is just like fucking, I feel like I'm standing on like a little earthquake plate or some shit. And I feel myself duplicate. Like there's Jordan right here, and then there's Jordan over here. And we're both kind of like, I don't know, it was the strangest sensation ever. And I was like, you know what, I better eat something. So I went and had lunch, and then it kind of stopped from there. But Yeah, I don't know. Whatever this thing is, it exists outside of space and time. It's probably like some sort of like formless consciousness. Um, Maybe, I mean, I can't really speculate if it has a physical body or not, because when that portal, I mean, I've seen various different kinds of beings, and really, I thought they were holograms at the time coming from satellites. Like I seen an anaconda head in my bathroom at one point that was like looked like a bear head, and then this tall white being in a like a like a wedding dress with a hood floating off the ground. She kind of like comes into my dreams every now and again, and the last time, so I seen her last night in my dream, and she wasn't threatening. I don't know who it is or what it is, but one of my roommates here at this sober house that I'm at had an experience with the same being. I never told him about this being before. Like he had told me about it. The only reason I kind of, what would you call that, offered the information was because he was telling me about like a suicide attempt that he had, and wound up in the hospital and had experienced like these beings, one of which matched the description of one that I had saw, which was the hooded being, and then what some might consider like the Hat Man or something. I really don't like talking about these beings or spirits or whatever they are, because you tend to invite more interaction when you do that. Like sometimes when I say that, I can feel their presence in the room with me. I would like to say though, just because I did bring them up and I did mention them, and someone will hear this and maybe think about them, and then they might accidentally attract them into their environment. Do not react with fear. Like if your body or if your nervous system feels like a spike, or if you feel like there's a fucking tiger in the bedroom with you and you're scared to dangle your little foot off the bed now, don't react with fear. Do not feed it with fear. Focus on the breath, regulate your nervous system, regain control of your emotions. That frenzied energy tends to just excite them.
Yeah, I usually kick into offering mode whenever I have that sort of experience, except for, so I've had a couple experiences in my apartment with energies or beings. And the one night being came in and it literally examined my head, and it was looking and it specifically said, there's not an ounce of child pornography in here. And do you remember that, Tony? But I remember in the moment being like really proud of myself. But then after the experience was over, I was like, that shouldn't be in there anyway. It's like, what is that? Is this what you do? You go around looking for child porn, But whenever that happens to me, I put myself in offering mode. Like whatever it is, I'm going to offer you. I don't care what you're all about or what your energy is. I'm going to offer you understanding and compassion. And existence is what it is. You're where you're at and I'm where I'm at. And that's cool too, And then one night I had just laid down in bed. My body went into a state of vibration and something grabbed my ankles and went yoink and pulled my astral body out of my body, drugged me through my living room, and I was hanging upside down in my kitchen, and it's holding me like this. And I'm just looking around, and it's my kitchen. Right. And I don't know what's holding me, but I can feel a tight grip around my ankles. And I'm like, I guess this is what we're doing now. Right. And then it let go of me. And then I shifted into another like astral plane.
It's funny you say that, because when I felt like it, well, I was kind of like communicating with like whatever guides I have present here, and trying to consciously enter the mind awake, body asleep state and separate from my body. And I was having like some trouble doing that. And I think a being assisted me out of my body, because it didn't happen in the typical way with like the ringing or the birch tree snapping, you know, I kind of had this feeling like I was being pushed and pulled from my body at the same time. Like if you had two magnets, right, and you're trying to pull them apart, that's what it felt like when I separated from my body. And then I popped out into like an astral version of my house, and I walk outside of my bedroom and I hear a voice that says, "Don't look in the mirror." So of course, like I look in the mirror, I'm like kind of half conscious, like stumbling over to the mirror. And then they say that, and I look at my face and it's like kind of distorted, kind of misshapen. But the more that I looked into the mirror, the more clear that I became. And I was like, wait a minute, am I out of my body? So I remember I took my shirt off and I started checking for my tattoos, and they were there. And which kind of surprised me. And then I shot back to my body, and the same thing happens again. I get that feeling of like a magnet being pulled apart. I'm like separating from my body, but I'm pushing up. Like I want out, like I wanted into the astral. And I get out of my body, and this time there's a shadow entity standing at my doorway, and he's like probably about a foot, maybe about the same size as me. And I was like, well, I better get away from this thing. So I start running towards the room with the mirror, and it starts following me. And I'm like, oh shit, this thing's fucking after me. And I was like, what did Kevin say? Love and compassion. And I remember saying that inside the astral, and then the being kind of just like passed right by me. But I heard that like only creations of your own unconscious will follow like that. So it was probably a creation of mine.
When you look at out-of-body experiences and near-death experiences, when you just look at those two well-documented phenomena, when you just look at those two elements, then it tells us that there's something else, that there's something beyond this physical body. Anyone who is stuck in materialism is discounting and being and fooling themselves, lying to themselves about these other experiences. And so then what that does is so then we end up going, okay, do I believe that this is all I am, or do I believe I am something else in addition to this, outside of this? And if so, then I should, and this is where a lot of TIs get in trouble, is if I believe that there's something greater going on here, then I can have faith that until I'm being actually injured by something that I can see and understand what's hurting me, then I don't need to have fear. I don't need to have assumptions. If I have faith that there's something else greater than this happening, and that after this body dies, I will go on to something else, then we can get rid of that fear of anything. Because if you're, you know what I mean? Like what Jordan said earlier is so important, that until something is actually, you can see it hurting you, until a guy comes up and punches you in the face, then you don't know that he's a danger. You can, if he's watching you weird, or you get a creepy vibe about him, it doesn't mean anything. You know, I mean, you don't know that he's actually a danger to you until he's a danger to you. And so until something proves to us that it's a danger to us, the assumption that it will become a danger is only feeding that thing. It's only creating that.
Yeah, I'd say one of the best attitudes that you can have, and I wouldn't consider myself like a very experienced astral projector at this point, but I mean, I've astral projected just in the past year close to a dozen times, you know. So, and then each time you do it, you're shown something else. And it's like, what happens here in everyday life is like just sort of preparing you for that, or is a byproduct of that. And I would say that one of the best attitudes that I've been able to maintain while having an out-of-body experience is like self-contained compassion. So because there's two main things that I always wrestled with. And one was, how could I possibly mess this up? Because the second you think, what could I possibly do wrong to mess this up? You've already thought about all the things that you can do to mess it up, and you've brought fear into it. And then the other thing is, am I good enough to be here? Do I deserve this? Because now you've brought insecurity and fear into it again. So those two, you have to let go of those things. And that's primarily how we get through our life every day. Don't mess this up. And am I good enough to be where I'm at in life? Like, am I good enough for this position? Am I right for this job position? Am I a good enough father? Am I a good enough employee? Am I a good enough brother? Whatever. And all the fears that we bring into any environment on what could I possibly do to mess this up? Don't mess this up. So learning to let go of those things and sort of shut down your default mode network and just be self-contained with just compassion towards whatever may come your way. I found that that's, for me so far, and that's always open to change. But for me, that's been one of the best ways to go about astral projecting. And I had a really cool experience the other night where I was contemplating like the nature of the afterlife and heaven or whatever comes next. Nirvana. In Buddhism, they have like Pure Land Buddhism. They have, and I had like sometimes, like I have like main voices that are pretty much just liars. But then every now and then you get like information that's just passed on to you that's not heard. You just know it. You just understand it, and something came through and it said hedge fund. And I was like, what the hell's a hedge fund? Like I couldn't remember what a hedge fund is. I'm not that money minded. So I go and I look up what a hedge fund, and here what it was telling me was that realms like heaven or heavenly realms are like a collective investment, meaning we take the best of our hopes and our dreams and our perceptions of what we think a higher plane should be. And that's where it's all going, and it's almost like we're curating our own afterlife with our own sufferings here and how things could possibly be better, from generation to generation, and then casting that, towards that. So I thought that was a very interesting concept that it chose the word hedge fund to pass on, as to what how they described heaven to be.
So we're talking about astral projection, which I know that Jordan and Kevin are way more, familiar with that realm than I am. I've never had anything to do with that except for an experience when I was 12 years old, where 11 or 12 years old, where I had this, what felt like I called it the 3-year dream. And that's where it felt like something took me out of my body and showed me a world a different timeline that I could have lived in. And and I lived in that world for like 3 years, it felt like. And then when I came back and had to go to school the next day, I was totally blown away and felt very psychotic and confused as a young man, as a kid. But so I wanted to ask you, Brittany, so have you had anything as far as, Jordan's talking about entities, and then we're talking about astral projection, out of body, those kinds of things, or even near death experiences. Have you had any of that kind of stuff?
I do not think I have, but I will say I've considered maybe I have been, because a lot of my dreams, it just feels like I'm watching a movie. Because I remember hearing something about flying in a dream, and I thought, I don't think I've ever flew in a dream, but from my perspective, it's like I'm watching a movie sometimes.
Hyper realistic dreams or something like that? And dreams are such a crucial part of this, most people's experiences with the phenomenon too, right?
Yeah. If you are dreaming, you are projecting your consciousness, maybe not into the astral, but into another aspect of reality. It's just, if you want to, what would you say? If you would like to keep your full conscious awareness, there are practices that you can do to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is another thing. It also leads into astral projection when you regulate the nervous system. There are methods that you can do to enter a state where you are in meditation and your eyes are closed and you begin to see images in front of your eyelids. And when you observe those images that you were seeing in your mind's eye, and you are in a relaxed state, you're not in a place of judgment. You're not saying this, like if you see a person, you're not saying that looks like my aunt or that looks like my cousin. Or if you see a dog, you're like, I used to own a dog back in like whatever. If you are in a place of just observing, not judgment, just noticing the images flashing before your third eye, you will enter a transition to where you almost switch realities. You just walk into the dream space. And it's just by staying awake during the process while your body is falling asleep.
Probably half of my astral projections occurred while having a lucid dream. Like I'll shift from the lucid dream into an astral projection. And usually it's the same series of events. I'm dreaming. I realize I'm in a dream. And then I set the intention to astral project. And then you're shot from the lucid dream into an astral projection.
I tried that.
Yeah, and I didn't know that was a common thing. Like, because when these things happen, especially for me, like, because this is all new for me, and they'd happen, and you almost have this sense of like uniqueness. You're like I don't know anybody that's ever experienced anything like this. But then if you go on astral projection on Reddit or something, you can just see it's what we go through it's very common. So it can be comforting and deflating at the same time, depending on how loose your ego is.
I tried that though. So I tried to get into the astral from a lucid dream, and so I popped out in this house. We're talking about that, and I had to find my way through this like facility that was not this house. It was like this house, but not. I don't know. It looked different. It was like a facility. I had to find my way outside, and I get outside, and I'm looking at the sky, and I'm like, okay, there's a dome above me. And then I'm like, all right, so I'm in the fucking dream realm, or like the loading area of the astral, and I'm trying to get up there. I'm trying to will myself to fly, and I'm like, okay, fly. I remember I start flapping my fucking arms like a bird, right? In this dream. And I'm trying to get it like out of the fucking dome that whatever. So I'm trying to get out, and while I'm telling myself to fly, my consciousness turns into like this little bird, and this little bird starts flying in this field, and then it lands, and I just see this like, I don't know, this little bird like crash land. So it felt like, I don't know what it was. Like it kind of like maybe I'd like hijacked a bird's consciousness and then crashed it, not knowing how to fly it. But or I turned into some kind of bird. I don't know. But needless to say, I couldn't get more than like 3 or 4 feet off the ground. Couldn't get out into the astral from lucid dreaming. And then I was kind of just like snapped back to my body.
Yeah, you can actually go, or I've actually gone back into the vibrational state during a lucid dream. I was telling, like, when we had our voice chat on Sunday, the last astral projection I had was a week and a half ago, and it was the same thing. It started off as a lucid dream where I was tempted 3 times with like 3 different scenarios, all according to things that I struggle with. Like one was lust. And then the other one was an argument with an older guy that just told me off in front of a group of people. Right. So I'm sort of unconsciously led into a scenario that's against my control. It's against my will. And then the whole scenario is set up. And then right at that peak moment where we're getting ready to respond to it, they let go and they give me my full awareness. And it's like, what are you going to do? Right. So it's like I'm unconsciously led to like this really beautiful woman. And, like she's coming at me or I'm coming at her, and she's like totally like, let's get it on mode, and then I'm in let's get it on mode, but against my own will. And then right at the last moment when it's time to get it on, they're like, boom. And they're like, you going to get it on? And then, so then I'm like, no, I'm not here to get it on. That's what I'm not doing that here. No. And then it's like, very good. And then they get her out of there, and then they'll move me on to something else. So they did that 3 times. And as soon as I passed all three of those, I was shot into a courtyard, just some random like courtyard that you would see in like a hotel or something. And it was nighttime and there was mulch on the ground. And I knew that I was either in a very, very lucid dream or on the astral plane. And I reached down and I grabbed the mulch and I went like this. And I remember thinking like, it's mulch. Like this is mulch. Like and I'm like, this is real. Like this is real. So I remember I put my face into the mulch because I wanted to go through it. Like I had just the intuition to go through it. So I put my face into the mulch and I was only able to like depress my face in like maybe 2 or 3 inches. And I laid my whole body in the mulch and then it wouldn't let me go through. So then I stood up and I jumped up in the air. And when I came down and I hit the ground in the middle of the courtyard, the whole scene went gong, 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 and just vibrated like a gong. My whole body and everything went. And then I went boom, and it shot me into a Buddhist temple. And I was in meditation pose and I was going like this and I was going upside down and then right side up. And there was information being transmitted and it sounded like, Bumblebee from Transformers, how he sounded, like how he would talk, like using whatever was available to get a coherent sentence through. That's how it was coming through. And, it asked me what I wanted. And I said, I want to know more about the self. Like, what is the self? And then that was it. Boom, shot me right back to my body and I woke up. But that was pretty intense. That was a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, I've been trying to do more of that myself. I haven't been able to shift my awareness consciously, like from a place of meditation yet. I always get to like I've sat in like meditation for like 3 or 4 hours, trying to get into the astral, and my mind kicks on and I start identifying with like these thoughts. Like I hear a thought say, this is taking too long. And then another one says, this isn't working. And then another one says, what's in the fridge? And another one says, I think I have some leftovers in there. And somewhere in this process, I get it in my mind to exit like the meditation that I'm in. And I'm really trying not to do that. I'd like to be able to do it consciously. I've heard a lot of different practices. I'm going to buckle down on that more.
I think a lot of it comes down to just constantly setting an intention, like even Brittany, like if, before you go to bed at night, just setting the intention to know that you're dreaming, I will be aware that I'm dreaming. Just that. I will be aware that I'm dreaming. I will astral project, I will, or I set the intention to astral project, over and over and over again, like really programming your mind to, to when it's time to make that switch, like it's already there, and it's ready to go. Because if you don't set the intention to do something, then, if that is your desire, if that is an actual desire to do something like that, just something as simple as setting an intention, repetitive intention over and over again, was immensely helpful.
Something interesting that Tony had mentioned earlier that I kind of just wanted to touch on really quick is the whole concept of fear completely falls apart when you come into awareness of your eternal nature. When you realize that you're not the thoughts, you're not the body, you're not the feelings, you're not the sensation. You are the awareness that contains all of these things. And that awareness is eternal. There is nothing outside of itself that can harm it unless it, wants that experience. But yeah, the body can be harmed. The body can be manipulated down here, but we continue. And when you know that, what is there to be afraid of? It doesn't matter. In the best way.
I think about that a lot. And then what ends up happening, because it's a little bit of a paradox, and it creates a little bit of paradoxical thinking. Because if you have family, if you have someone that you care about, then if they get hurt or die, then if you don't feel sad or whatever, scared to protect them, that kind of thing, because you think, oh, well, they're an eternal being. If they leave, because I truly believe we leave this world when we're supposed to. But then if you believe that, your family is going to leave when they're supposed to, then you don't try as diligently to protect them and keep them alive, and you don't get as sad and freak out. And, when they do pass, and you're not as protective of them, because you're like, they're an eternal being. I'm not scared for them at all. You know what I mean? And so it's tough, because we can't grasp that, and it's not acceptable. Honestly, in this world, people can't accept it. If they see me not being as scared of death for me and everyone else, then I tend to get judged,
And I think we're supposed to, to an extent, because even just going back to the story that I told where I was tempted 3 times and put in 3 different situations, like that second and third situation were situations where I was being publicly humiliated to see how I would respond. And it's a form of consciousness-based gang stalking, right? So I don't get gang stalked in my environment, but it's happening up here. Like I'm being gang stalked in my own head and in the astral realm and in my lucid dreams, I'm being tested. And a lot of people don't experience that. They experience actual gang stalking out here from complete strangers, or the phenomenon is setting it up. And this is a recurring pattern that we see, and where it's almost like, I hate to say like we come here to get gang stalked. Gang stalk is a new term for temptation and being tested, and, iron sharpens iron sort of thing. But I really feel like a lot of what we're experiencing is like a consciousness form of gang stalking. And if we can look at if our purpose of being a human is to take the human curriculum and to become better and stronger, and more compassionate, and learn how to do that. And if reincarnation is a real thing, and we're just constantly cycling through lives, working out our karma and bettering ourselves. I mean, to a degree, you almost are going against the curriculum to not face these sort of confrontations, unless you get to a point where you understand that, and and you really understand that this is all a setup. This is all just a setup to turn me into a more overall developed being, And I will agree with what you said, Jordan, that on different planes of consciousness, there is no fear whatsoever. And I had shared this with Tony, it was a few months ago. Tony was going through a very rough time with the tactile sensations and the fit, just torturous. And I was brought into some layer or something where there was another being, and the being was holding up a sign that said deliverance, like it was offering me deliverance. But on that plane, I didn't have the decision. It wasn't even a decision. I just knew that Tony needed it more than I did. There was no selfishness on my part. So you can't even say oh, you're such a good person. That wasn't even available. It wasn't even available for me to think better of myself for thinking of Tony on that plane of consciousness. It was automatic. It was oh no, I will gladly suffer for the sake of somebody else. If he can be delivered from his ailment and from his torment, I will. That makes this, now the suffering makes sense. So, yeah, different planes that you go on, certain things don't exist there. There is no fear. So on this plane, this human curriculum that we're taking, where we do experience a great deal of fear and animosities towards one another and altercations, and we're trying to work out the many knots of the human life. I'm to a point now where I just look at it all as it's part of the curriculum. I went through the curriculum of being a drug addict. I went through the curriculum of being abandoned by my father and going through that. I went through the curriculum of having a brother that committed suicide and going through that. I went through the curriculum of having 2 kids that I wasn't a very good father to. And now I'm experiencing the curriculum of being a sober father with a 2-year-old daughter that I have a great relationship with. And, and these are just all parts of being, whether I chose this or I didn't choose this, I don't know, but I'm just kind of going through what I'm supposed to be going through.
I love it. I also love that we have a 5th member in this video chat. And what is this? What is your friend's name there, Brittany?
That's Panther.
Panther?
Yeah, he's the half Siamese one. I have Siamese cats and Scottish Folds. I breed them. That's my job. Excuse me, Pam.
Before we get out of here, I really would love for us to kind of maybe just talk about the Parawareness Discord group. Because these, Brittany and Jordan are recently signed on as moderators for the group, for the Discord chat, and I feel like it's growing lately, and we're really helping people, and there's a lot of open-minded people coming in, and then the people who, because the TI, if you want to call it that, the targeted individual community, is so filled with people who, one, think they know exactly what's happening to them. And number 2, feel the need to tell everyone else, I know what's happening to you, and so, but anyway, just for the Parawareness group overall, the Parawareness Discord chat, can we talk about that for a little bit? Does anybody have anything they feel, something, feel compelled to say about that?
I'd like to ask the group their thoughts on the addition of the tech talk.
I took a step back for 2 months and was like, thrilled when I did come back to see that the group had grown by almost 100 new members in 2 months. That's like just an exponential amount of growth. And I was very happy to see you guys in a moderator position. You're doing a wonderful, wonderful job. And it was important for me to step back. Like I felt like it was too much, like it was like too much of me in it, like too much. I had to control it, like it needs to be this way and it has to go this direction because the other direction sucks. And it's like, and I had too much of that sort of control. But one of the things that I was always adamant about was less technology, more psychology. And one of the main reasons that I had that was because I from what I see and from my own experience and understanding is that the more time that somebody spends in that kind of dialogue, the more that awareness, if we can say that, or the more that your attention is directed towards that belief system, the more of a reality that is. It's almost like what we were talking about earlier, where each reality is only as real as you are aware of it, right? And when we were talking about the dues earlier, and was that an actual reality, or were we shifted, or was what we don't know. But I do know from experience and from just moderating these communities and starting communities for over 2 years, is that the more that people indulge in that sort of dialogue and in that belief system, the more of a reality it is, and the more the phenomenon will play out according to that person's reality and belief towards it. On the same hand, we need to be able to reach people where they're at. So there's that whole thing. So there's like, what I believe is best for people's growth. And then there's the people that say, how dare you say what's best for my growth, and don't allow us to talk about this, which is totally understandable. I get it. And then there's having a channel set up where we can talk to people in there. And it's nice to have that channel because you don't have to go in there if you don't want to, but is that channel bringing a different energy in there that we don't want? I'm kind of, that's where I'm kind of at with it. I was happy to see it because it's an avenue for more people to come in and discuss what they want to discuss, and allow them to go upward into general chat, or, you know, where any other channel where they can sort of come back and forth between the two, you know, between the material weaponized world and more of a spiritual uplifting world, and teeter back and forth between the two to see which one is best for them. Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with that. And just for future notice, I have no desire to, at this point, to like, kind of like, I love the fact that you guys are moderating the community. It's yours. Keep moderating, keep doing what you're doing. I don't want to have anything with muting people, banning people. Like, I don't want to do that at all anymore. I'm very happy that you two are where you're at, and Tony and, you know, and Peter stepping in. It's, you know, that's what was needed, was for me to get the hell out and allow somebody else to do that. That's what was needed.
Yeah. So I would love to hear what you moderators think about the addition of the Tech Talk channel, or channel, and you know, and what do you think about the group in general?
I like that those type of people have an outlet to talk about that stuff, and I think it's very healthy for them to be able to do it in a server that you guys created with the mindset that it cultivated, because that means that they have a higher chance to transition from tech to doing more spiritual work. And like, you know, instead of technology, psychology, like Kevin said, I have noticed there has been an uptick of some problems, but just because there's problems doesn't mean it's bad. So I don't really know what to say other than what I've observed so far. I don't have a formal opinion on it other than that I hope that it helps people. What do you think, Jordan? We haven't heard from you.
I am on the fence about it. I think one of the most destructive things that I had done was research technology. And it was the reminders of the group that allowed me to redirect my awareness from the external outside of me to the internal inside of me. And this is where it turned around for me, when I consciously directed my attention into my spiritual evolution. That being said, I'm very aware of the power of your belief and or our belief, and the power to speak something into creation. And if you are kind of, I mean, it's good that, in the sense that it's not an echo chamber. You will have people challenge your beliefs. If you say something absurd, someone is likely to let you know that. So in that way, it's good. There were a lot of TI channels that I was a part of prior to being a member of this group on the Signal app that are literal echo chambers of assumptions and best guesses and strong feelings. And no one in there, to my experience, has progressed through the phenomenon. They are stuck in the gathering evidence stage and suing the government.
Especially in the TI community, they'll choose compensation over contemplation most of the time because they feel wronged. And because they feel wronged, they feel absolutely right. Like we never feel more right than when we've been wronged. And, you know, we've been wronged, you know, from our perspective, like this is some wrong shit, right? And we feel right with that because, you know, like we're in a world of just confusion that it feels really right when we can point the finger and say, you wronged me. And people will chase that over and over again, pointing the finger at the government, at secret societies, whoever.
Thinking a payday's coming.
Yeah, but I think one of the most powerful things is exactly what you just said, Jordan. And if we can utilize that, right? Because what you said was one of the worst things that I did for myself was get involved with, you know, with the tech talk, and that I didn't really grow or advance through the phenomenon until I let that go. And I'm just going to propose that is part of your testimony. And that's an important part of your testimony and a powerful part of your testimony. And it's also a powerful part of my testimony that it just needs to be relayed exactly like that. There's no reason to get into a debate about the tech. There's no reason, you know, because it's all theory and patents and government. And, you know, the only thing that really needs to be said is I went down that road. I found no alleviation. And then I went down this road. And all of a sudden, you know, this is where I am now. And to go from somebody that was having their hair falling out to seeing demons and anacondas and falling down and live, you know, basically on the streets. I remember all the problems with the girl that you were seeing, and then the tumultuous time. Should I go into rehab? I'm like fixated on this woman. I don't want to leave her, and the guilt and the shame and all the embarrassment, and my life is in shame. And then just completely 100% orienting your focus towards and dedicating your focus towards this, where you're at now. And now look at you. You look like Jesus. Look at you. Look, I'm looking at Jesus. You're like ginger Jesus to me. Like, I don't even, you're glowing. You're like a glowing ginger Jesus to me right now. You know, and that's powerful. That is powerful. That's powerful. Like the greatest truth that we have is just telling the truth. I said that in the meeting the other night. You know, when it comes down to what is truth, just telling the truth, whatever that is, 100% being truthful. And that's your truth. And that's my truth as well. And that could be other people's truth, you know?
And the problem with truth ends up being that if our intentions and our attention end up helping to create our reality, and manifestation has some merit to it and things like that, then the more that we talk about and hold up and you know these technological aspects of this, then the more that we could be creating that. And I totally agree with what Jordan's saying. And I have taken a different path on this, as everyone can see. Normal Guy News, this thing that I'm doing, is clearly saying, I want to look at every aspect of what humans are going to see in this. I want to look at every single aspect that I can come up with in a digestible format to get more normal people, if you will, to look at this, to get more people who are on the tech side of this to look at the other possibilities. And it's never to encourage anyone to talk about technology being the culprit, because I don't believe that's the end result. If you actually do your research, you find that there is so much more there, that it's not someone with a backpack-sized energy weapon like on Sean Ryan's show shooting people from across from another apartment. We all know that. Anyone who's really experienced this knows that that's not what's happening. And so my take on it is, the more that we can get everybody to look at this thing and look at all the perspectives, and then we can say, now we can actually bring in what is really happening, which is this is greater than that. And so the more people that do come in and go, well, that server doesn't keep me from talking about technology in that one little area. Now, you know, if somebody starts spouting technology in Gen Chat, then I hope that you guys will help me to try to discourage it first. You know, hey, we're not here to talk about that. We're trying to focus more on psychology and spirituality. If you want to talk about that, there's the tech channel. But the hope is, of course, like we've said, to get those people to come into a space where people are loving and supportive of each other while going through this terrible, difficult thing. And then hopefully, like Brittany said, give them a bridge in a way, to go from just being in those echo chambers to see that there's this beautiful place where people love each other and they're still going through this thing while being completely honest about it and open to possibilities. If it were I don't think that it's, when you think that everything is possible, then you don't need to look at everything. You don't need to research everything possible because everything is possible. I don't need to go into and research the depths of satanic worship and, a sex magic. I don't need to go really research all that, because the more that I do it, the more I'm going to be bringing it into my life. And I know that I've proven it. But at the same time, I think that if we just expand our horizons a little bit to say there are a lot of people out there who think that it is this thing, let's bring that in and then kind of like compare and contrast to what we really think it is, which is more of a spiritual, psychological combination. And so that is my hope. That's what, that's why I'm doing it this way. That's why I want people to look at these things, because they're real, they're honest, they're a huge part of our reality. And so that's where I'm at on that. But I appreciate you guys giving your 2 cents and being honest about it. And like Kevin said, that's all we really want, right? All of us. I think that we all want as much honesty as we can get and as much truth as we can get.
Like, what do you really want for people within the community? Like, what is it that you want? Like, what is your main desire for them?
I want them to be happy and healthy the best that they can to their ability at any given time.
That's well said. I think that I might have to just echo that. I mean, I can't think of a better way. I want them to be informed. I want them to be knowledgeable. I want them to see the full picture, and then, realize the best path forward has kind of almost been proven, in my opinion. But I want them to be happy and healthy. And, I guess that's the basis, right? That's the baseline.
I don't know if I want anything for anyone. I think I'm just there to share my experience, and whatever anyone can pull from that adds to their experience or subtracts from it, or whatever it does for them, good or bad. I don't know. I don't know how that sounds, but I don't feel attached to being the help.
I'm a huge believer in free will. And so I don't even believe in praying for people. I know that's, a lot of people might think that sounds shitty, but I don't even believe in praying for people, because I don't want in any way, I don't think that I have the right or the knowledge to hope that they do anything, because I think that they're on their right path already. I think they're making their choices through free will. I hope that they continue to do that. And I don't, I just hope the best for them, but I hope that they find their own path. And so I don't believe that I need to have any interference. Now, I'm going to put out these things that I think could be helpful for the people who it will be receptive. But other than that, I don't want to change anyone's free will or control anyone in any way. So I think that's a version of what you're saying in a way, Jordan, right?
But it's a good community, and there is a lot of help in there.
I've always wanted the suffering to make sense for people. Like, that was always my, because there's nothing worse than just senseless suffering, just you just suffer for nothing, and or just being abused and ridiculed and humiliated and just tortured for what, for absolutely nothing. It's enough to make you want to kill yourself. Like, what's it? So, it was always my main thing was because when the suffering can make sense, life becomes beautiful again. And that's when I see people finding beauty in life again, because but you have to come out of that. And then once you're in a place like where you're in, Jordan, or you're in, Tony, or you're in, Brittany, and you can look back at the experience and what you went through in relation to where you're at now, and you see that growth, and it, you know, like now there's continuity. Now there's like cohesion within the overall experience, and a lot of what you went through now makes sense. But getting people out of that, which requires eliminating the blame game and the victim mentality. Those are the two main things that have to go away in order to come out of that. The person has to come out of the victim mindset, and they have to stop blaming, even if it's blaming yourself, you know, or blaming up whatever it is, and really focusing on those two things. You know, like what we were saying earlier, are you friend or foe? Are you victim or perpetrator? So, and that's zeros and ones. That's binary thinking, victim, perpetrator, friend or foe. So learning to break that, because that's a loop. That's a recursive loop in somebody's head. Then they get stuck in that. So first drawing them out of that into a more clear area where they can then look back at the entire pattern of things from a different perspective, where they're no longer the victim and they're no longer wanting compensation and playing the perpetrator game, and seeing the growth pattern within themselves, and then seeing that manifest within their reality and in their, you know, their psyche. But yeah, I've definitely noticed that the less of me that's involved in that, like meaning like I don't want anything from anybody. Like, you know, there's not, you know, not wanting anything from anybody is huge. You know, there's nothing you can give me. I don't want anything from you. So going, you know, starting the communities and leading the communities with zero expectation of anything coming back in return, but just keeping that core understanding right there of breaking people out of that, where they can at least get to a point where it begins to make sense, because that's when you're like at the gym and you start noticing a little bit of muscle, and then you're like, oh, I love the gym, you know, and then people start going. But yeah, that's been a very big thing for me to learn over the past 2 years.